He then, I think, was engineered into a meeting at Soho House with Meghan, and I think there was a lot of engineering went on there. She's actually a lot older than she actually purports to be, which brings a question mark into the birth of Archie and Lilibet. There's a whole period in her life where a lot of the photographs are beginning to surface of her life in the Mediterranean before she even met Harry, and I think there's a lot of engineering that's gone on there that will eventually come out.
The YouGov polling done to mark Queen Elizabeth II's centenary drops a major reality check on how people in Britain really feel about the royal family. This isn't just another survey. It's one of the clearest snapshots in years, breaking down public opinion in a way that hits hard and leaves no room for guessing. The numbers are bold and impossible to ignore. The late Queen still holds a huge 81% positive rating, even nearly 3 years after her passing, which is seriously impressive. She's still the top name linked to the monarchy, and right behind her is Princess Diana with 77%, proving her legacy is still alive and powerful. That kind of lasting love doesn't happen by accident. It shows how deep her impact really went. William and Catherine are right there too, sitting at 76% and 75%, showing people are still trusting them more and more as time moves forward. Princess Anne stands strong at 70%, steady as ever. King Charles, dealing with ongoing drama around Andrew and Harry plus his health battle, lands at 60%, still ahead of Prince Philip's 54%, which says a lot considering everything stacked against him.
Actually, Charles, given the controversy surrounding Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, doing very well, 60%, actually above his father, Prince Philip, 54%.
Then things take a sharp turn, and the mood completely shifts. Queen Camilla comes in at 42%, showing the public still hasn't fully shaken off how they view her role in Charles and Diana's marriage. That perception has stuck around for years, and it clearly still weighs on how people see her today. Now look at this drop. Harry sits at 30%, Meghan at 20%, and Andrew all the way down at just 3%, which is seriously low. But Harry's numbers hit different when you look at the bigger picture. Back in 2018, he was riding high, with approval ratings above 80%, right up there with the late Queen. He had that strong mix of Diana's legacy, real charm, and his military background, and people were fully behind him. Fast forward, and it's a completely different story. That 80% has crashed down to 30%, and about 70% of people in the UK now view him negatively. That is not a slow fade. That is a full-on collapse in public support. And it lines up directly with the moves he made. From the Oprah interview, to the Netflix series, Spare, public speeches, big tours, and the way everything was presented to the world. Some narratives try to frame this as media attacks or outside pressure, but the YouGov data tells a different story. The shift reflects how people reacted over time to what they've seen and heard, and those opinions have clearly hardened in a major way. Around 1,700 British adults were surveyed using a method that has delivered reliable results for decades. So this isn't some random guess. These people didn't land on a 30% approval rating for Harry because a newspaper told them what to think. They watched everything unfold over the years and made their own calls based on what they saw. That 70% disapproval isn't noise, it's a clear and direct verdict from the public after 8 years of very visible actions. People have been paying attention, and this is the result of that long-term view building up over time. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The media has started pushing a new Fab Four image, but this time it's William, Catherine, Edward, and Sophie taking that spotlight. That shift isn't random at all. It reflects exactly what the polling is already showing. Before, the Fab Four label was all about William, Catherine, Harry, and Meghan as the future of the monarchy, the next generation set to carry everything forward. But that image didn't last. The dynamic changed, and the institution clearly adjusted with it. Edward and Sophie stepped into that space, and during the centenary coverage, the public moments, the visible unity, and the energy around the family naturally created those new comparisons. And make no mistake, Harry is fully aware of how this new narrative is playing out.
Drop the bomb that the Soho House meeting between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry was quite clearly engineered. He finally reported on the question marks over the births of Prince Archie, and Princess Lily.
He's got internet access, so none of this is hidden from him. He can see the photos, the polling numbers, the headlines, all of it playing out in real time. There's no way to ignore it when it's everywhere. What he's watching is the institution moving forward without him, swapping out his role in that once promoted partnership and building a new wave of public support. The same kind of excitement and attention that was once tied to him is now showing up around others, and it's happening naturally. Even moments like the Australian tour, which were meant to build that connection, didn't land the way people expected. And now the contrast is hard to miss. And here's the tough part. From the outside, it looks like there's no easy way back into that position. The kind of return that could shift public opinion would mean fully stepping back into royal duties without conditions. And that situation just doesn't line up with where things stand right now. Reports suggest that kind of move wouldn't be welcomed on all sides, and it creates a real standstill. Then you've got Jeff Banks stepping in with a rare mainstream media moment on GB News. With years of experience and a strong presence in British television, he brought up points about Meghan Markle that usually don't get this level of open discussion, which is exactly why people are paying attention to what he said. The Soho House meeting between Meghan and Harry has been discussed by some as if it was carefully set up, and that has kept people talking. There have also been claims floating around in certain circles about Meghan's age, plus chatter about a period in her life in the Mediterranean before she met Harry, which some people looking into her background have focused on. But the age claim needs serious caution, because this is where facts matter. Dan Wootton has discussed it after speaking directly with Samantha Markle, and Samantha's response was detailed and checkable. She spoke about her own age in 1986 and her memories of Meghan as a child, including saying she witnessed Doria's pregnancy. Samantha also pointed to school photographs from 1986 that she says can be checked through school records. The timeline she gives is clear. Samantha was born in 1964, Meghan was born in 1981, which makes Samantha 17 years older, not 6. That lines up with the documented record and pushes back hard against the age rumor. And this part matters. The Markle family, despite their public issues with Meghan, are still saying the age claim is wrong. That is how claims like this should be handled. Check the evidence, look at the most direct sources, and stick to what can actually be supported. The strongest evidence comes from the people closest to the situation. Samantha Markle, who was there during Meghan's early childhood, has clearly said the age claim is wrong, and that needs to sit right next to the rumor itself in any honest discussion. You can't just push claims without stacking them up against real, verifiable accounts. Now, the Soho House angle is a different story, and this is where things get more interesting. Marcus Anderson has been a steady figure around Harry and Meghan for years, even before their marriage. With his role connected to Soho House and his repeated appearances around the couple, including during the Australian tour, people have noticed that his connection goes beyond a casual friendship. The idea that Anderson may have helped bring Harry and Meghan together at Soho House hasn't been officially confirmed, but it fits into what is already known about his connections. He had links into both Harry's circle and Meghan's professional world at the time, which makes the claim stand out more than just random speculation. Then there's the Dan Wakeford angle, which adds even more weight to the conversation. Reports tied to his insights suggest that certain pressures behind the scenes are very real. And this lines up with what some commentators have been saying for a long time. When someone with direct access is mentioned in these discussions, people start paying closer attention, and the narrative gets harder to ignore. There are clear signs of tension in the marriage, and people have been pointing to specific moments that raised eyebrows. Harry leaving Australia after just 48 hours, being back in Montecito, then suddenly showing up in Kyiv and making a major speech. On top of that, speaking critically about the United States just days before the King's state visit had people seriously questioning the timing. To many observers, it came across like someone restless, someone not fully settled, always looking for the next move. Then there's the claim from commentator Petronella Wyatt, who suggested Harry may be trying to pressure his way back into the royal fold by creating difficult situations. The idea is that this pattern continues until he gets clear answers about where he stands, And moments like the Kyiv speech get pulled into that argument because the timing made it hard to ignore. Think about it, making a high-profile speech with that kind of tone just days before such a major royal event doesn't exactly calm tensions. Instead, it can come across as a way of making sure attention stays on him, showing that his voice is still part of the global conversation and can't be brushed aside. Then there's a completely different detail that caught attention. Alistair Bruce shared a story about the late Queen arranging a prime seat at her own funeral for his husband, a moment that added another layer of intrigue and showed just how carefully things were planned behind the scenes. Knowing that Alistair Bruce would be broadcasting and that his husband sitting in the front row would mean something deeply personal to him shows a very specific side of Queen Elizabeth II that keeps coming up again and again in the centenary coverage. She paid attention to people, real people in real moments, and she acted on it in quiet but meaningful ways. What makes it stand out even more is how it was handled. There was no announcement, no headline, no press release to highlight it. Alistair Bruce only found out afterward, once he realized what had been arranged behind the scenes. That kind of thoughtful action isn't something you can recreate with public gestures or carefully planned appearances. This is the part that people keep coming back to. The Queen made sure a broadcaster's husband had a special place at her own funeral, simply because she understood what that moment would mean to him. Not because she had to, not for recognition, but because she chose to. That's a level of personal awareness that goes beyond titles and ceremonies and shows who she was behind it all. Now compare that to a more modern moment that got attention. On the day of the centenary, there were reports about Harry sending flowers to her grave along with media coverage tied to it. The contrast between a quiet, private act and a very public gesture has sparked a lot of conversation, and people are drawing their own conclusions from it without needing much explanation. At the core, this is about two completely different ways of showing respect, and the contrast is hard to ignore. The YouGov poll showing Harry at 30% reflects how the British public currently sees him. The Fab Four shift shows where the institution itself is heading. And the Alistair Bruce story stands as a very personal example of what many feel has been lost along the way. Meanwhile, Harry is in Kyiv delivering a speech at an international security forum, while the king is in Washington working through serious diplomatic matters. Some commentators, like Tom Sykes, have even questioned how that speech was put together, adding another layer of debate around the moment. All of this is happening while the numbers continue to tell their own story. Look at the contrast that really stands out. Princess Diana still holds a 77% approval rating decades after her passing, in the exact same poll where Harry sits at 30%. That gap hits hard because of how often he references her in public moments, whether it's global events, mental health discussions, or major speeches. Her legacy is a constant part of his message. She represents compassion, humanitarian work, and emotional connection for many people. And yet, the public's view today shows a clear separation between her lasting image and how Harry is currently perceived. That 77% isn't coming from selective memory. It reflects a deeply rooted connection people still feel, and it makes the contrast even more striking when placed side by side. This all comes down to what people truly experienced from Princess Diana, and that memory still hits strong. The warmth she showed to those who were suffering, the courage she displayed walking through landmine fields in Angola, and the deep grief the world felt after her passing are all still very real in people's minds. That absence has lasted for decades, and it hasn't faded. What stands out is how she handled everything. She didn't turn her pain into public spectacle or content. Instead, she showed up for others in the most direct way possible. She visited sick children in hospitals, spent time with AIDS patients when others wouldn't, and sat with landmine survivors, giving them real attention and care. In every moment, it was about them, not about creating an image. That kind of presence left a lasting mark, and people haven't forgotten it. So when her name is brought into modern conversations, the comparison naturally happens. The public can see the difference, and the polling numbers reflect that gap clearly. And this is where the bigger picture comes in. The shift to a new Fab Four isn't just media talk, it signals a real direction for the monarchy moving forward. Focusing only on Harry and Meghan's actions can distract from that larger change. which is already shaping how the institution presents itself to the world. William and Catherine are now seen as the core of the monarchy, and their approval ratings of 76% and 75% show exactly why. In a modern democratic society, that kind of support is what keeps the institution steady and relevant. They're not just visible figures, they represent stability and consistency in a way the public clearly responds to. Then you have Edward and Sophie, who have been putting in the work for years without drawing much attention to themselves. Quiet, consistent, and drama-free, they've handled a huge number of royal duties and charitable efforts since their marriage. Now, with the centenary coverage shining a light on them, people are finally recognizing their role, and the response has been warm and positive. This is what the monarchy looks like when it runs smoothly. It's about showing up, doing the work, and not turning every moment into a headline or a business move. No memoir deals, no streaming specials focused on personal struggles, no extra attention on image, just steady service that speaks for itself. The so-called Fab Four shift isn't something forced, it's grown naturally out of years of consistent effort finally being noticed. The public sees it, the media reflects it, and the approval ratings back it up. Harry was once part of that picture, but he stepped away from it. Attempts to recreate that same connection through highly managed appearances didn't land the same way, and polling results over time have shown how differently those efforts were received. It didn't work because what was being copied isn't something you can just recreate on demand. Real connection, real service, and real impact show up in a way people can feel instantly. And when that authenticity isn't there, people notice that too just as quickly. When service is genuine, it creates real reactions from real people. But when it starts to look staged or overly managed, that difference stands out. That's where the gap shows up. And the numbers reflect it clearly. Harry's approval sitting at 30% today is a long way from the 80% plus he had back in 2018, when the connection with the public felt more natural and unfiltered. Fast forward to now, and the attempts to rebuild that same energy across different appearances and events haven't landed the same way. Whether it's international visits, private gatherings, or carefully planned moments, the response has been noticeably different, and people have been picking up on that shift. Then there's the reaction behind the scenes. Reports have hinted that King Charles had a strong private response to some of these developments, with descriptions suggesting it wasn't positive. The exact words haven't been made public, but the tone alone has sparked curiosity. What stands out is that he's balancing two pressures at once. On one side, there's what he may truly think, and on the other, the need to keep things controlled and avoid adding more headlines. That tension between private views and public silence says a lot on its own. Keeping a calm public stance doesn't mean approval, it shows a calculated decision. It suggests that, from that perspective, taking action might come with a bigger personal or institutional cost than holding back. That's not about agreement, it's about weighing consequences and choosing the quieter path for now. Some observers argue that this approach isn't working, pointing to the 30% approval rating and the growing attention around the new Fab Four dynamic. Still, that decision rests with King Charles, and he's the one shaping how things are handled at this stage. Prince William, on the other hand, is often seen as taking a different approach, one that appears more focused on drawing clearer boundaries over time. There's ongoing speculation about how future events and roles will be structured, and how certain long-standing questions may eventually be addressed. What remains clear right now is the public snapshot. The YouGov polling lays out where opinion stands at this moment, giving a straightforward look at how the current situation is being viewed across the UK. Harry at 30%, watching the rise of the new Fab Four, traveling to places like Kyiv for major speeches, and constantly on the move, it all paints a very clear picture. At the same time, that quiet moment involving Alistair Bruce, where the Queen arranged a seat for his husband without telling anyone, stands out as one of the most powerful details from the centenary coverage. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was deeply human. That single act says more than any headline ever could. It shows what genuine care looks like in real life, not staged, not announced, just done because it mattered. That level of attention, that instinct to quietly do something meaningful for someone else, is what many people see as the institution at its best. And here's where the contrast hits hard. Carefully managed appearances, short visits, private events, and heavily photographed moments can't recreate that same feeling, no matter how polished they look. People can sense the difference between something real and something constructed, and that awareness shapes how everything is received. The Queen's approach was simple but powerful. She thought about people, acted on it, and never needed recognition for it. That's exactly why, even now, the public response remains so strong, with an 81% approval rating years after her passing. Now, place that next to Harry's 30%, and the gap speaks for itself. That distance reflects the shift that's taken place over the years, and it sets the stage for what comes next. The direction from here will depend on future choices, and how those choices connect, or fail to connect, with what people value most. The full record is all there, nothing hidden, nothing missing. The 81% for the Queen and the 30% for Harry, the rise of the Fab Four and moments where public enthusiasm looks very different, the quiet funeral gesture versus the very public flower tribute, the Kyiv speech alongside major media deals, it's all part of the same picture. The comparison isn't being forced. People are naturally making it, and the YouGov polling reflects exactly that. And then there's a detail that really stands out. Reports suggest Harry has not received an invitation to Sandringham for the traditional Christmas gathering, which is usually one of the clearest signs of family unity. That kind of moment would normally signal warmth and reconciliation, so its absence has caught attention. Because here's the reality. Public messaging can stay calm, controlled, and diplomatic, but private actions often tell a clearer story. You can keep a composed front and still make firm decisions behind the scenes. Not extending an invitation sends a message without needing any official statement. It cuts through the careful language and shows where things may actually stand at a deeper level. And that's why people are paying attention, because sometimes what doesn't happen speaks louder than anything that does. He's aware of the missing invitation, and reports say he's made it clear he would want one. Coverage from outlets like the Sunday Times has mentioned efforts on his side to reconnect, especially around key family moments. The interest is there, but the reality is simple. He's not included. And that says a lot, especially when public narratives sometimes suggest the door is still wide open. That gap between what's being said and what's actually happening becomes very real here. You can talk about reconciliation, but when something as symbolic as a Sandringham invitation doesn't happen, it turns the situation from theory into something concrete. Looking ahead, more signals are coming, and people are watching closely. Events like Invictus preparations could bring him back to the UK, and the aftermath of major state visits will shape the environment around his presence. Each appearance, each move adds another layer to how the public reads the situation. And through all of this, those polling numbers stay in the background, steady and hard to ignore. With figures like 30% for Harry compared to much higher ratings for other royal figures, that context will influence how anything he does next is received. The record doesn't rush, it just keeps building piece by piece. It holds everything. The 30%, the missing Sandringham invitation, the Kyiv speech, the major media deals, and that quiet moment with Alistair Bruce at the funeral. And it's not stopping anytime soon, it's only going to grow with whatever happens next. What makes it powerful is that it doesn't try to fix anything or smooth things over. It simply places everything side by side, the public narrative and the actual events, and lets people see the difference for themselves. That gap doesn't disappear, it becomes clearer over time as more moments are added to the timeline. And at the center of it all, the numbers stay solid. 81% for the Queen, 30% for Harry. That gap isn't just a statistic. It tells the whole story in a way nothing else can. If you've been following this, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from over.